WuSA, wake up South Africa. You've been sleeping far too long. Wake up South Africa. Now come along and sing this song. Wake up South Africa.
Hare Krishna. I'd like to thank Sabyasachi Prabhu for inviting me to speak on this platform, and I'm very happy to be with you all today. So today I'm going to be speaking about the topic I have chosen is the spiritual dynamics of relationship building. So life is all about relationships. We are not islands. We are social beings. Life begins with relationship, first with the mother, the father, family, relatives, and friends. And then later on, marriage and children. And ultimately, our original relationship is with God, Krishna. So for those who are married, that relationship is the most important of all the human relationships, because that's the closest one, and people who are married tend to spend more time with their partner than with any other individual. So married couples build a life together and build a relationship which influences all our other relationships. So, like, for example, when a couple is in a happy marriage, then they attract people to associate with them, and they give shelter to others. But strong relationships require work. And in the beginning, a marital relationship is upheld by the initial attraction between two people. But to maintain a strong relationship in the long term, it requires a lot of work and investment. So there's a little saying that I really believe in. It's that a successful marriage is not about finding the right person so much, but rather, firstly, about becoming the right person. So it's all about self-development, really. Because if we go into a relationship expecting that another person is going to make me happy, it's not going to work like that. Because our happiness depends on ourselves. Our happiness comes from inside of ourselves. And that's something we can share with other people and reciprocate. But it has to be reciprocal. What goes around comes around. And a lot of the points I'm going to make today are applicable not only to marital relationships, but also to all relationships. So, you know, they can be applied, even if you're not married. You can find that a lot of these points can apply to different relationships, like with friends, with family, and like that. So we're going to focus on the spiritual dynamics, so that the foundation of knowledge is the study of matter and spirit, Sankhya Yoga, the difference between matter and spirit. This is like the basis of all knowledge. And from that comes understanding the difference between the soul and the body, and in everything around us. And the super soul as the soul of the universe. So because we're all spiritual beings in reality, So the real relationships are actually spiritual when we learn to operate on a spiritual platform through that knowledge, through not only understanding, but realizing the difference between matter and spirit, the difference between the soul and the body, when we can actually separate all the externals, the body and all the conditioning, all the social conditioning, when we can see the difference between that and the actual soul, the actual person, that means spiritual vision. That's like Krishna says in the Gita, Pandita Samadarshina, that a learned person sees all living beings equally because he or she sees the soul and not just the body. So relationships which are based on the body, the mind, and the ego, those are temporary, those aspects are temporary. Because the false ego is a product of the material energy. Bhumir apo nalo vayu. That's one of the elements: earth, fire, water, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Those are all material elements. So when we fall under the influence of the false ego, which we all tend to do very often, that is a material conditioning. That is not who we really are. So we need to be able to separate ourselves from that. And because that's something that does tend to interfere a lot with relationships and cause problems in relationships if it's not controlled. Whereas the spiritual aspects of a relationship are actually eternal. So relationships become eternal when they operate on a spiritual level, on a transcendental level. So the more a relationship becomes spiritualized by spiritual knowledge and spiritual vision, the more it becomes strengthened and protected, because then it becomes deep, it becomes real, it becomes permanent. So to actually become situated in transcendental knowledge, to actually develop a spiritual vision, it begins with the mode of goodness, because the mode of goodness is actually a stepping stone to transcendental vision, to liberation from the material energy, from material entrapment. And mode of goodness means mindfulness. Nowadays, we hear a lot of talk about mindfulness. Well, mindfulness is really about mode of goodness, because it means self-control, to control the senses, to control the mind, and to become detached from negative emotions, to be able to control the emotions and use them properly. It's connected with emotional intelligence. And mode of goodness also means knowledge. Someone in the mode of goodness is cultivating knowledge, spiritual knowledge, and it means virtue. The mode of goodness is supported by virtue. And it is actually virtue that builds good relationships. So some of the human virtues that are very conducive for supporting successful, harmonious relationships are things like humility, gratitude, kindness, faith or loyalty, truthfulness, authenticity, hope, forgiveness, sacrifice, and love, which is the love is the mother of all the virtues. It's higher than a virtue, but it also gives birth to all the virtues, you could say. So, like, for example, humility is very important in relationships, to have a smooth relationship. Where there's no humility, then there's bound to be a lot of friction, because whenever we fail to practice humility, then it becomes just like two egos bouncing off from each other. And but humility can prevent relationships from becoming battlegrounds for egos by opening people up to accept responsibility and to forgive, to be willing to admit to problems and consider ways to improve the relationship. So in other words, humility makes us more introspective. It helps us to have meaningful discussions that are productive. Humility is about just seeing the reality of who we are, just remembering that we're not the center of the universe, that we're just tiny jivas. And actually, it's in one sense, you could say, the crown jewel of all the virtues. It's something very important also in Vaishnavism. So it's said that humility helps people to understand that there's something more important than being right, and that is being kind. So because we are all individuals, we all have our own opinions, so there's going to be disagreement and conflict. It's natural, we can't avoid conflict, but the conflict needs to be managed so that it doesn't get out of control and so that it doesn't negatively affect our relationships. A conflict can actually be a good thing. Relationships without conflict can also become unhealthy, because if we have pent-up feelings and we don't express them, that can be actually harmful for ourselves and for our relationships. We can start to become bitter or resentful, which is not good. So it is important to express our feelings. And sometimes if that produces some conflict in a relationship, that's not a problem, as long as it's managed and as long as it's moderated. Because actually, by expressing pent-up feelings, we can move forward to a better understanding of ourselves and of each other and of our relationships. So the process of building a lasting relationship requires a couple to be honest with each other and to exercise their freedom to express their thoughts and feelings openly. So anger is a natural reaction during conflict, and it's not necessarily damaging to a relationship. So anger also can be expressed, doesn't necessarily spell doom, but it's only if it is expressed with criticism, with contempt, or if it's overly defensive, then it can cause some damage. So as long as conflict does not become ugly or vindictive, offensive, aggressive, or wounding, hurtful, then it can actually produce positive results, but otherwise it can be destructive. And when conflict becomes ugly or vindictive, it can actually destroy a relationship. So that is something we have to be very careful about. And an important part of managing differences or contentious issues is to moderate the tone of voice. Like they say, it's not what you say, but the way you say it. So we can say something nice in a way that doesn't sound nice, and then it wouldn't be nice. Or we can say something that's not so nice, but in a nice way, then it becomes more digestible for people. In other words, the truth has to be spoken sweetly and humbly. So instead of accelerating the voice into the attack mode, if people try to use precise words to describe their emotions with patience, with humility, this can help to manage and to diffuse confrontation. If emotions do become too heated and out of control in a conflict situation, because it can happen, it does happen, then there's also options of timeout and self-soothing. In other words, taking time out and just taking a break, and what they call self-soothing. There are many ways to self-soothe, to kind of bring down anger and out of control emotions like that, is by prayer. Actually, is a very powerful way. And we have chanting, of course. Chanting is the best, chanting the Maha mantra. And as Lord Chaitanya says, Trinadapi sunichena, Tarorapi suhishnana, Amanina manadena, Kirtanya sadaharis. This is one of our very special verses about humility and how the holy name is best chanted with humility. So when we're more humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, like that. So the chanting is best done with humility. But if we're struggling to find our humility, then by chanting, we can get it back, because Krishna is present in his holy name. And that's the best form of self-soothing. Then another virtue that is very supportive for relationships is gratitude. Gratitude is very important, to appreciate everything that is good about the other person, and also to accept people as they are. Because if we try to change people, impossible task. We can change ourselves, but we can't change other people. So we have to learn to accept people as they are, and then we'll come to love them as they are. And we have to appreciate everything that is good in life and in our relationships, whoever, because we come together with another person by Krishna's arrangement. And so if we can give up the fault-finding mentality and try to remember to always see the good, we will find so much good about another person. Because at the end of the day, everyone is part and parcel of Krishna. The soul is pure and innocent. And especially if that person is a devotee, then they have many good qualities, even if they are still struggling, as we all are, to become purified, even if we still have our conditioning, our anatas, but there's also so much good that we can find in another person. And to express that appreciation is really important, because we all need to feel appreciated. And when we appreciate another person, that person will also appreciate us. So expressions of appreciation are very important for building and maintaining solid relationships, lasting relationships, and happy relationships. And another one is kindness. Of course, kindness is very important. This is a value that we uphold. This is a value that is, and a virtue that is actually appreciated by everyone. And there was some survey that to find out what it is that people look for the most, which quality they look for the most in a potential partner. And the number one was kindness. So everyone needs kindness, everyone wants kindness. And by being kind to one another, then we receive kindness in return. And because we're all suffering in this material world, so we all need kindness. And then another quality is, or a value that is important for keeping relationships together, building them, is faith. So faith in the sense of keeping faith in the partner and keeping faith in Krishna as well. Because all of these qualities, all of these virtues, they actually come from Krishna. Otherwise, where do they come from? Some people are atheist or agnostic, but they appreciate virtues. They have moral values. So where do these morals come from? Where do these virtues come from? It's not something that can be experimented on by material science, but they exist, but they're invisible. So where do they come from? The only plausible answer is that they come from the original person, Krishna. So we all have these virtues because we also come from Krishna. That's why we have these virtues within us. It's not something that we have to grow in the sense that we have to get it from somewhere outside of us. They're all within us, and we just have to dig deep enough to find them and then build them up by the practice of Krishna consciousness and by developing good relationships with Krishna and with devotees and with and those who are closest to us. So this faith, loyalty and trust in a close relationship where there is openness and trust, we make ourselves vulnerable. When we place our trust in someone, we make ourselves vulnerable. So it's ironical that those that we are closest to are actually the ones who can hurt us the most, because we are most open and vulnerable to those people. So in close relationships, we have to be very careful to not hurt another person, that person who is close to us. To not, if someone gives their heart to us, we have to be very careful to handle it with care. And because trust is very important in relationships, it takes time to develop. But once it's developed, then we have to be very careful to not betray that trust and always remain loyal to those who are loyal to us. And to be truthful is another one. Truthfulness, honesty, and to always tell the truth, and always also to be authentic in the sense of being ourselves, not being artificial. It's in close relationships, we have the protection and the shelter that allows us to develop who we are and to be our authentic selves. And Another virtue that's important for relationships is hope, to always maintain hope and positivity, so as to not give up, even when there are difficulties. To be tolerant is very important, because when you live closely with another person, you know, other people can be annoying. So we learn to tolerate, just as we, and this is another quality that is important in spiritual life also. As Krishna says in the Gita, Matra Spashas to Kanteya, to tolerate happiness and distress, and to not become disturbed by the ups and downs of life, the ups and downs of relationships, and to be patient. Tolerance and patience go together. And patience is extremely important in relationships and in spiritual life. As Rupa Goswami says in the Nectar of Instruction, patience is mentioned there as one of the 6 principles that are favorable and for the execution of devotional service. Enthusiasm and patience. And another very big one is forgiveness in relationships, because there are always going to be requirements for forgiveness. It could be a small offense, or it could be something bigger. It could be something that's perceived as a betrayal. So forgiveness is extremely important to be developed. And we all need to be forgiven for our offenses. And we all need to learn to forgive. And also to make sacrifices, because there is no love without sacrifice. It's by making sacrifices, that's how we actually put our love into practice. And again, this applies in both Bhakti Yoga and in relationships between people. So to sacrifice means to give up things, to give up our own pleasure for the pleasure of another. And of course, there are many, many opportunities for sacrifice in marriage and family life. And the topmost of all the virtues, which is more than just a virtue, of course, is love. In Bhakti Yoga, the ultimate aim of life is to develop love for God. And by developing love for God, we also learn to love every living being. Because every soul is part and parcel of Krishna. So we are supposed to learn how to love everyone. And of course, with those who are closest to us, that love is the greatest. And humility and love are nourished within relationships through mutual service. So love is not just a lip service, but it's shown by action. Just as we show our love for Krishna by serving him, and we show our love for others by serving them. And so the most powerful and effective way to spiritualize relationships is to put Krishna at the center. And there's a very interesting a verse and a purport by Srila Prabhupada to a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, Chapter 8, from the prayers of Queen Kunti. So I will just read a few lines of that purport to you because it's very relevant to the topic that we're talking about today. Prabhupada says, this tie of affection, he's referring to the tie of affection between Kunti Devi and her family, her sons, because she was praying to cut the tie. She was praying to Krishna to cut her ties of affection. So Prabhupada says this tie of affection in terms of material relation is the relation of Maya, because the relations of the body or the mind are due to the influence of the external energy. Relations of the soul established in relation with the Supreme Soul are factual relations. When Kunti Devi wanted to cut off the family relation, she meant to cut off the relation of the skin. The skin relation is the cause of material bondage, but the relation of the soul is the cause of freedom. This relation of the soul to the soul can be established by the medium of the relation with the supersoul. Seeing in the darkness is not seeing, but seeing by the light of the sun means to see the sun and everything else which was unseen in the darkness. That is the way of devotional service. So that's a very interesting purport that Prabhupada actually spells it out, that in family life, we can actually have spiritual relationships which can free us. But this can only happen via medium of relationship with the super soul or Krishna. So when we keep Krishna at the center of our relationship, in other words, by serving Krishna together, by supporting one another in Krishna consciousness, then our relationships with each other also become more and more spiritual. So by strong spiritual practices, like by chanting, reading, sharing Krishna consciousness with others, and devotional service, by hearing, chanting, and remembering Krishna with deity worship and offering food. You have a little altar in the house and offer your food and take prasadam, do some kirtan, do some chanting together, and just try to remember that everything we're doing is for Krishna. Dedicate everything to Krishna, and that is bhakti. That is bhakti yoga. So, and also there are the also mentioned by Rupa Goswami are the 6 loving exchanges, which are shared between devotees, but these are also applicable to marital relationships. So these are offering gifts, accepting gifts, revealing one's mind in confidence, inquiring confidentially, accepting prasad, and offering prasad. And Rupa Goswami says these are the 6 symptoms of love shared by one devotee and another. So for Grahastha devotees, these 6 loving exchanges are also very important for building their relationships within family life. So we give gifts and we accept gifts. We open our minds to each other confidentially in trust, and we listen to each other confidentially. So we we trust each other to keep our secrets. And we also share prasad together. We cook, offer the food to Krishna, and share prasad together. So eating nice prasad together is very important for happy family life. So a relationship, it's a little bit like a bank account in the sense that positive interactions are deposits and negative interactions are withdrawals. So the way to build up credit in a relationship is through positive interactions, through such as these loving exchanges. And if sometimes there's some negative interaction, then it won't really do any damage as long as we've built up a good credit of a lot of positive interactions. Then a little negative interaction will just blow over and will not be taken seriously. It won't affect a strong relationship, which is grounded in good, positive exchanges. Just like we have Prabhupada sometimes talked about the spiritual bank account of devotional service, which is eternal, like whatever service we do for Krishna, it stays in our spiritual bank account forever. Like Krishna says in the Gita, there's no loss or diminution, and it remains forever. So, so similarly, by building strong and loving marital relationships based on spiritual values, we also develop more authentic and loving relationships with others, with friends and relatives, and ultimately with Krishna. So this relationships, a relationship is a testing ground, actually, to prepare us for going back to Krishna. This is something that was mentioned by Bhakti Swami in the Spiritual Warrior, which some of you may have read. He described a relationship as a testing ground. So by learning to develop selfless love, by giving selfless love in a relationship, so we're preparing ourselves to go back to Krishna, because that to be with Krishna requires selfless love. So that's something we learn through all our relationships, through our interactions with the people who are put together with us by Krishna. It's all for a purpose. And also in return, that our love for Krishna helps us to increase our love for his children, which means everyone. So when a relationship becomes established on a spiritual platform, it can become unbreakable. So because we are souls in a relationship with another soul, if we see it like that, then the relationship becomes eternal. That's why there's that term soulmate. People talk about soulmates. It means a spiritual relationship with someone that you may know from a previous life. You may be together in the next life, because it's not material. It's not just material. It's something deeper, something more lasting. So the more a relationship becomes deep and strong and Krishna-centered, then the more it can become unbreakable and eternal. So this is the best way to protect relationships from breaking up and to stay together, because we're put together with other people for a reason. So even there may be so many difficulties and challenges, as there are in every relationship, but if we can weather the storm, if we go through them, these are all tests. And the more we pass the tests, the more stronger the relationship becomes. until it becomes unbreakable. So these are the spiritual dynamics of relationship building. So I will stop there so that we can have some time in case there are any questions. Is that okay to stop there?
Oh, thank you so much, Mataji. There are no words enough to thank you for the service of so much truth and wisdom that you've shared with us today. So I see that on the group, there's a comment that has come in that I'm going to read to you, Mataji. I also encourage anyone who has a comment, a realization, and or a question to type it out in the group or raise their hand as Bongisipo Prabhu has. So I'll start with the comment first, and then Bongisipo Prabhu, perhaps I'll give you an indication thereafter to just unmute yourself and share your question or comment. So the first comment came in from Bafana's iPhone, and it reads, so he says, yesterday I witnessed a final sending away of a husband in the marriage from the house he lived in for more than 20 years. His clothes were packed in a black dustbin bag. It was a final straw end of the chapter of the lengthy relationship. It humbled me. I reached a conclusion that I'd rather better try all humility to keep my own marriage relationship, with the understanding that everything comes and goes. Pain does not stay, but it comes and goes. At the end of the relationship, due to the lack of applying fully all the virtues enlisted in this talk or lecture, results in giving up the relationship. Worse if there is no Krishna consciousness in the center.
Right, yes. Is that a question or it's a comment?
No, it was just a general comment, Mataji.
Right. Okay.
We have one person whose hand is raised, Bongisipo Prabhu. You may kindly unmute yourself to ask whatever question you have or share your comment or realization.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, and to all the other devotees. So I kind of have a question. Patitya Maharaj says that in Spiritual Warrior 2, he says that we see each other as objects of our own pleasure as a result of lust. So what do you have to say on that?
Okay, so yes, lust is actually a perversion of love, in the sense that our original love is with Krishna. And when we come down to this material world and accept a material body, then that love turns into lust. And the difference between love and lust is that love is selfless, whereas and it's like, I mean, pure spiritual love is selfless in the sense it's when we love someone, we want to give them pleasure. And lust means we want to give ourselves pleasure. So it is natural when we have a material body that there's going to be that desire, which is the natural function of the body. So that's why we practice spiritual life, to become purified from this lust, because lust is a transformation of love. So therefore it can be transformed back into love, because it's the same thing in a different form. So but actually to transform the lusty desire into pure love, it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen easily. It requires a process And that's why we have the Varnashram process, and that's why we have marriage. So like for those who can manage to control their senses, then they can remain brahmachari. But for most people, marriage is required so that can be regulated in the sense of just having one partner and using that propensity to procreate children, have a family, and by going through all the austerities of family life, and by continuing to practice bhakti yoga, we can gradually, we need to develop a higher taste, actually. That's what Krishna says in the Gita, that it's only by developing a higher taste that we can give up the lower taste. So, so by chanting and by devotional service, as we develop a higher taste in Krishna consciousness, then we can, at the same time, we can give up that lower taste. But it does take time. It's usually a gradual process. So we just have to keep going and don't become discouraged if it's still a problem. Just like when you're driving a car on a motorway and you can't just, and you want to turn it around to go the other direction, you can't just slam on the brakes. You have to slow it down gradually until you find a safe place to turn around, and then gradually you can turn it around. So it's like that. It's a gradual process. But if we don't give up, if we keep striving and praying and trying our best, then eventually we'll get there. Is that okay? And don't feel bad about it, because it's normal. Everyone has the same problem. You've muted yourself.
Oh, sorry, I think the admin had done that. I see that Akrura Das Mataji has her hand up, so she can kindly unmute herself. And also in Tabi saying Mataji also has a question here that I can read after your question or comment. Akrura Mataji, you can go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, it's actually Kamalasundari Dasi here. Akrura Prabhu, my husband, is just a bit away. He's with our kids. Thank you so much to the hosts and Jagannethesvari Prabhu for your time and wisdom. It's been so enlightening and enlivening to hear all your realizations. I actually was making some points and I had a few questions. One question I did put in the chat, and then I had another question as well. Yes, you mentioned that we must be honest and express our feelings to the right channel. So sometimes I feel like it's hard to find that right channel. And like you mentioned, that yes, we know only Guru and Krishna is our source and our connection, but we here at the moment, and so I find sometimes that link is a bit difficult to find in our umbrella of the society. And my follow-up question was, well, I had so much of appreciation for all of your wisdom, in fact, because I was just taking notes. So myself, Akrura Prabhu, and I are new parents. I have a daughter that's going to be 4 in September, and a son that's, well, he turned 1 in March. And as a new mom, a new parent, just in general, finding, and I'm now currently a stay-at-home mom, also, yeah, a stay-at-home mom, and just that alone, I feel is a bit, one, you know, it's a branch on its own. And then there's so many other duties, you know, I'm a wife, I'm a disciple, I'm a mother, And I just want to know any advice that you can give to me on regarding parenting, because also what I did was I created a group, well dubbed the MIB, Mums in Bhakti, for moms that need love, loving encouragement and support. So if there's any moms here at the moment that want, sorry, it's just a small announcement, but if there's any moms that, want need any encouragement, they're welcome to message me. But for myself personally, can you give me any sort of advice as a new mother and a devotee in ISKCON? Thank you. I hope I made sense.
Yes, sure. Well, to become a mother with small children, obviously your life is turned upside down, and it's never going to be the same again. Well, maybe after they've grown up, then it may be, but your first duty is to look after your children. So, you just enjoy doing that and try to do it in a Krishna conscious way. You're not necessarily going to be able to follow the same sort of program, like if you had a specific morning program or anything like that before, or everything has to be adjusted really for the children. But it's it's a wonderful service because Krishna has given you these little children to bring up as devotees, to bring these souls closer to him, and to help them to become devotees. So that is now your service. That is your sadhana. That is your preaching. That is everything. To bring them up with love and with discipline. And when they're small like that, there's really not much you can do in terms of discipline. So, you just give them your love, take care of them, and help them to become Krishna conscious as much as possible. And just enjoy it while it lasts. Because once they get big, then there's new, different challenges, even bigger challenges coming.
Thank you so much, Mataji, for the question and for the answer. So we have two questions in the chat at the moment from Tabiseng Mataji. The first reads, Hare Krishna Mataji, all glories to Srila Prabhupada and all glories to you. Thank you for a beautiful lecture. Understanding relationships and most importantly, having Krishna-centered ones is vital. My question is about Krishna's arrangements. How best should we approach difficult relationships under the feeling or philosophy of everything happens according to Krishna's arrangements?
Difficult relationships means that I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but if there's some difficulty, then it means perhaps there's more work that needs to be done to reach, to understand one another. Because in order to have a smooth, like a productive relationship, we need to understand each other, and that takes work. So so to keep Krishna at the center is important, but we also need to be able to open up if there are problems or difficulties or misunderstandings. We need to be able to open up and clear up misunderstandings and and really get to know each other in such a way that we can really help and support each other. Because, in order to move forward in Krishna consciousness, we first have to have a functional, healthy relationship. Is that okay?
I should hope that it is for her. And then there's a second question from Tabiseng Mataji again, and this one reads, my other question is about romantic relationships amongst devotees. Is this something that is proper to engage in, even though there is no prospects of marriage, but both partners are trying to grow spiritually together?
Well, if there's a romantic relationship, then that needs to be tailored into marriage, really, because marriage makes it it makes it then you can actually link it with your spiritual life, because you're making a commitment. And because to have a romantic relationship with no intention to marriage, it's not a real relationship, because it means you're not planning to carry on. It means at some point you want to cut it off. And like I was saying before, you want to talk about developing spirituality, but spiritual relationships are not, they don't have like an expiration date on them. So there has to be that commitment. Spiritual relationship means soul to soul, so that means that's ongoing. And temporary relationship, it's not spiritual, then it's material. Then it means that at some point, it means there's still some kind of selfishness, some holding back. It means you're not really giving yourself fully to the person. You're not giving your trust. You're not giving your commitment. You're holding back. So it's not really a full relationship, and it's not really going to take you, it's not really going to help you in your spiritual life in a deep way.
Thank you so much for everyone who's shared a comment, a realization, and the questions. And thank you so very much, Mataji, for engaging and indulging devotees in their questions and shedding further light and giving us more wisdom in dealing with our relationships and being better at our relationships, really, with obviously Krishna at the core, operating from the mode of goodness all the time. Unfortunately, as sad as it is, we've reached the end of the program. But before then, there's just a couple of announcements that I would like to quickly go over. The first announcement is about Mother Jagannethesvari can be found at Jagannethesvari on Facebook, as well as on Instagram, where you can like and follow her pages. I also kindly ask you to please visit, like, and share and follow all WuSA social media platforms that include Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. The handle across all these platforms is at WuSA108, at WuSA108. Please help us to get to 1,000 follows and subscriptions and even more. We thank you so very much in advance for all of your support. I'd also like to let you know that the morning japa sessions are on every morning from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. South African Standard Time. The details around the daily program will also be communicated in the WuSA weekly WhatsApp group. Please just revisit the chat box before the meeting ends to see all of the links that our admin group has put there for the WuSA weekly WhatsApp group and other links that you may access to be able to communicate with WuSA admin and other devotees. Furthermore, the books are the Basis Club is up and running. Please join us in in this association every Thursday evening for a jam-packed reading and sharing of realizations. The session is via Zoom. Also, the heart-to-heart Vaishnav circle is happening every Friday from 6:30 to 7:30 standard South African time with Her Grace Mother Vraja Leela, featuring various senior Vaishnavas speaking via Zoom. For this, you can visit www.WuSA.online to find out more. And on our website, you'll find out about all of the other announcements that I've just made, if perhaps I was going too quickly for you to hear. I also kindly ask you to please register for our CKC Cupped Poetry Workshop at our website again, www.WuSA.online, on the arts and crafts at the House of WuSA page. The Creative Krishna Consciousness Content Creators Program is an international collaborative effort through Quiddity Concept Magazine via our creatives, helping creatives network, a preaching through empowerment initiative. The last announcement is that you are welcome to join in on the ongoing discussions every Wednesday as shared on the WuSA website. I repeat again, at www.wusa.online/campaigns. And as we work towards developing ideas geared towards inclusively sustainable growth, you can also visit change.org and follow the WuSA campaign titled Allow Devotees of ISKCON South Africa a Voice in Solving Existing Racial Imbalances, to proper familiarize yourself with the WuSA effort. I repeat once again for the last time that please join the WuSA Weekly WhatsApp group via a link at www.wusa.online to receive regular activity updates and communications. The link is in the chat panel, as I've just said. It is very important to note that this group is only used for quick announcements, and no spam will be posted on the group, as admins only have the access to post anything on the group. Last but not least, the Global Voices Volume 2 Kirtan Festival is on, live and hot like a heater, coming at you this coming Sunday, Balaram Purnima, 12 hours of non-stop kirtan featuring various kirtanias from around the world. All advertising and announcements about the program will be shared via the WuSA communications and social media platforms. Thank you so very much.
Ibhuku lokuqala engalifunda elimayelana noKrishna, phecelezi ngesiZulu Jago, uNkulunkulu umvelinqangi, umdali wakho konke esikwaziyo. It was called The Science of Self-Realization. Laphendula imibuzo yami eminingi imibuzo yami, ngoba ngangihlezi ngiyibuza ukuthi senzani la emhlabeni, yini isizathu silana, siqhamukaphi, sadalwa ubani, izihlahla esizibonayo zenzo ubani, yonke into imibuzo enjalo. Mangilifunda la ngiphendula yonke lemibuzo, la nginikeza nolwazi olujulile ukudlula imibuzo enganginayo. So I would really recommend that if you have burning questions about umhlaba, creation, God, us, yourself, you should read The Science of Self-Realization by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada.
Well, thank you very much again for inviting me, and it's been a pleasure to be with all of you. And it's nice to see all the initiatives and programs that you are moving forward with for spreading Krishna consciousness in South Africa. You're doing wonderful work, and please carry on. We'll keep in touch.